They told us that the Bible holds the ultimate truth, the sacred words of a single, omnipotent God. But what if everything we've been taught is a carefully crafted story, designed not just to guide our souls, but to control our minds? What if the very foundation of modern religion, the shift from polytheism to monotheism, wasn't just a spiritual evolution, but a strategic move to consolidate power? Why did ancient civilizations, from Sumer to Israel, make this radical shift? What secrets have been hidden for millennia, buried deep within the folds of sacred texts, shaped to manipulate entire societies? Why does the concept of one God, a God so powerful, so omniscient, that questioning him is considered heresy, feel so oddly familiar and yet so unnatural? In this video, you will uncover the shocking truth behind the Sumerian myths and their influence on the Bible. We will dive into how ancient gods, once seen as partners in the creation and evolution of humanity, were replaced by a singular God whose will is absolute, with no room for doubt or debate. You'll discover why this shift from a world of multiple deities, each with their own personality and influence, to a solitary God, fits perfectly into the political structures of emerging empires. You'll understand why the story of the Great Flood, as told in the Bible, isn't just about divine wrath, but about the power struggle between gods who once stood for balance, rebellion, and even mercy. Did humanity's need for autonomy, wisdom, and independent thought get stripped away to build a system of control? And what about the Holy Trinity? Could the Sumerian gods of Anu, Enlil, and Enki be the true predecessors of the Christian concept of the Trinity, reshaped for a new theological agenda? Brace yourself, because what you're about to learn will challenge everything you thought you knew. We will unravel a hidden narrative, one of manipulation, control, and power struggles that spans thousands of years. By the end of this video, you'll see how the stories of gods and humans weren't just told to explain the mysteries of life. They were weaponized to form the foundations of empire. Keep watching, because the truth is much deeper than you think. From the dawn of civilization, human societies have sought to explain their existence, their purpose, and their relationship to the divine. In the ancient Sumerian worldview, gods were not distant and unapproachable. They were multifaceted beings who interacted with humanity in profound, intimate ways. The gods of Sumer were partners in creation, guides who showed humanity how to survive, how to grow, and even how to challenge the world around them. There was no single god ruling over all things. Instead, a council of gods, each with their own roles, ambitions, and desires, shaped the world together. Enlil, the god of storms and authority, could be harsh, but he did not demand blind submission. Anu, the highest deity, governed from the heavens, but he was a figure of distant wisdom, not control. Enki, the god of wisdom and water, was the protector of humanity, offering knowledge and salvation even when it meant going against the will of other gods. Theirs was a world where divine beings were as complex as the human beings they ruled. However, something shifted in the story of human spirituality, a fundamental transformation that has shaped not only religious practices, but also the political structures that followed. This shift was not merely an evolution of religious belief, but a calculated strategy for consolidating control. The Sumerians, with their rich pantheon, were replaced by a new vision of divinity, a single, all-powerful God who demanded total obedience. This transition from a pluralistic divine council to a singular, omnipotent deity is at the heart of what we know today as monotheism. But what caused this change? And what were its far-reaching implications? The rise of monotheism is often viewed as a natural progression of spiritual evolution. But if we dig deeper, we see that it wasn't simply a matter of religious belief. It was a strategy to unify, control, and strengthen the power of ruling elites. The shift from multiple gods to a single all-powerful God happened over many centuries, gradually becoming entrenched in religious texts and political systems. The Hebrew Bible, which would become the cornerstone of Christian and later Islamic teachings, was one of the main instruments of this transformation. It wasn't just a religious reformation, it was a powerful tool for shaping society, controlling thought, and enforcing loyalty. Take, for example, the biblical flood narrative. In the Sumerian myth, the god Enki defies the other gods' decision to wipe out humanity, secretly warning a man named Atrahasis to build an ark and save himself and his family. The gods are divided. Enki's act of rebellion isn't just an act of defiance, it's an act of love for humanity. He sees the potential in humans and chooses to protect them from destruction. But in the Hebrew version of the flood, there is no divine protector like Enki. Instead, we have Noah, the chosen man, who obeys God's command to build an ark, while the rest of humanity perishes. In this retelling, the message becomes one of unquestioning obedience. Those who listen to God's commands are saved, while those who rebel are destroyed. This is a profound shift in the relationship between humanity and the divine. The Sumerian myths offered a complex, multifaceted view of gods who interacted with humanity in ways that encouraged growth, knowledge, and even rebellion. Humans were not passive recipients of divine will. They were active participants in their own salvation. The Sumerian gods made mistakes, disagreed with each other, and sometimes even allowed for human intervention. Enki, in particular, was portrayed as a protector of humanity, granting forbidden knowledge to the human race. In contrast, the Hebrew Bible stripped away this complexity, replacing the nuanced relationships between gods and humans with a singular, unquestionable authority. God became the ultimate ruler, whose will was absolute and unchallengeable. This change was not just a theological shift, it was a political one. In the emerging monotheistic societies, a single, all-powerful God mirrored the political structure that was forming, a hierarchical, centralized system of governance. In this new world, obedience to the divine became synonymous with obedience to the rulers who claimed to represent that divine will. The leaders, whether kings or priests, were now the exclusive intermediaries between God and the people. To question the authority of the rulers was to question God himself. This shift gave unprecedented power to those who controlled access to divine knowledge, particularly the priestly class, who now held the keys to salvation. The consolidation of divine authority into a single, unchallengeable God served as a tool for social and political control. It unified people under one law, one ruler, and one truth. But this shift wasn't unique to Israel. Throughout the ancient world, we see similar patterns of change. The Egyptians elevated their pharaohs to divine status. The Romans deified their emperors, and the Greeks constructed a pantheon that mirrored their own political structures. What makes the Hebrew shift so significant, however, is that it laid the foundation for the development of monotheistic religions like Christianity and Islam, religions that would dominate the world for centuries to come. Yet, there's something deeply human in this transformation that deserves our attention. As the gods were stripped of their individuality and merged into a singular divine being, so too were humans redefined. In the Sumerian worldview, humans were partners with the gods, capable of challenging divine will and seeking knowledge. But in the monotheistic worldview that emerged, humans were portrayed as inherently flawed, in need of redemption, and subject to the will of an unyielding God. This shift did more than change how people worshipped. It altered how they saw themselves. Humans were no longer collaborators with the divine, but subjects under divine rule. This change in the portrayal of humanity's relationship with the divine had profound social implications. The Sumerian view encouraged curiosity, wisdom, and self-reliance. Enki, the god of wisdom, was depicted as a figure who gave humans the tools to understand the world around them. Knowledge was not seen as a threat, but as a divine gift. In the emerging monotheistic tradition, however, knowledge became something to be guarded, controlled, and distributed only by those deemed worthy. The quest for knowledge and autonomy was no longer seen as a virtue, but as a potential source of rebellion. Think about the story of the tree of knowledge in the Garden of Eden. In the Bible, Adam and Eve's decision to eat the forbidden fruit is often viewed as the original sin, a fall from grace that condemns humanity to a life of suffering and subjugation. But in the Sumerian myth, knowledge was not something that led to destruction, it was a means of empowerment. The rebellion of Enki, giving humanity knowledge even when it went against the will of other gods, is seen as an act of compassion. Enki believed that humanity deserved to know the truth and have the tools to shape their own destiny. This is where the shift becomes particularly interesting. The move from a world of divine rebellion, where gods and humans could interact and challenge each other, to a world of unquestioning obedience to a singular, omnipotent God, is not just a theological transformation. It's a shift in how we view the nature of existence itself. In the ancient Sumerian world, humans were not seen as inherently sinful or flawed. They were capable of growth, change, and learning. They were not subservient to the gods, but partners in the struggle for survival. In contrast, the monotheistic worldview that emerged placed humans at the mercy of an all-powerful God, creating a hierarchical society where the pursuit of knowledge and independence was no longer encouraged, but suppressed. But there is a deeper truth in all of this, one that still resonates today. The consolidation of divine power into a singular, unquestionable God was not just about religious belief, it was about control. By stripping away the complexity of multiple gods, each with their own personalities and agendas, and replacing them with a singular God whose will could not be challenged, the foundation was laid for an entire social and political order. The divine became a tool of power, a force to unify and control, and humanity's role shifted from being active participants in their own destiny to being subjects of a divine will. So, what does all of this mean for us today? Perhaps the real lesson lies in the importance of questioning the narratives we've been given, whether they come from religion, politics, or culture. The shift from polytheism to monotheism was not just a change in spiritual beliefs. It was a strategic move to consolidate power and control. It reshaped not only our relationship with the divine, but also our understanding of ourselves. And perhaps, in this age of information and self-discovery, we have the opportunity to reclaim the wisdom of the ancient world, to return to a place where knowledge, autonomy, and curiosity are seen as divine gifts, not threats to authority. The transition from a polytheistic worldview to a monotheistic one was not just a shift in religious beliefs. It was the formation of a new order, one that would forever change how we view ourselves, our relationship to the divine, and our place in the world. But what if this change was more than just spiritual? What if it was also political, designed to consolidate power in the hands of a few and create a society where obedience to a singular, omnipotent God mirrored the obedience demanded by rulers? In the ancient Sumerian world, the gods were many. They were powerful, yes, but they were also deeply human. They had personalities, motives, and emotions. Anu, the supreme god, ruled from the heavens, but was distant. Enlil, the storm god, brought both creation and destruction, but wasn't bent on total control. Enki, the god of wisdom and water, walked alongside humanity, giving knowledge and guidance, even defying other gods to protect the people he loved. This was a world where gods and humans were equals, where humanity had the right to question, challenge, and even bargain with the divine. But as the ancient Israelites began to form their own understanding of divinity, something fundamental shifted. No longer were gods seen as equals or partners. Instead, the people of Israel began to focus on one God, a singular force whose will could not be contested. This shift, which would eventually lay the foundation for Christianity and Islam, wasn't just about spirituality. It was about power, control, and the creation of a hierarchy where the rulers of society could claim to speak for God, demanding absolute loyalty and obedience. The Bible, as we know it, reflects this transformation. Take, for example, the famous Ten Commandments. In the original Hebrew Bible, God commands that there shall be no other gods before him. This is not simply a spiritual directive, it's a consolidation of power. By removing the plurality of gods and elevating one supreme deity, the early Israelites were creating a system where there was no room for dissent, no alternative perspectives. It was a system where questioning the ruler, the priesthood, or even the divine authority itself became synonymous with questioning God. This shift from polytheism to monotheism was not a simple theological progression. It was a deliberate political move. In a polytheistic system, authority is decentralized. There are multiple gods, each with their own realm of influence, their own role in creation and destruction. This creates a balance of power, where no one deity, no one ruler, can dominate. But in a monotheistic system, all of that changes. The power of one God, one ruler, is absolute. There is no balance of forces, no room for negotiation. Everything, creation, destruction, salvation, and damnation, rests in the hands of one omnipotent figure. Think about the stories of the flood. In Sumerian myth, the flood is a divine act of destruction, but it's not without redemption. The god Enki, seeing the potential for humanity, goes against the will of the other gods and saves humanity from the flood. His act of rebellion is not seen as sinful, it's seen as compassionate. Enki is a protector, a figure who defies divine will to save humanity. But in the Hebrew Bible, the flood is a different story altogether. Here, God alone commands the destruction of humanity, and only Noah and his family are spared. There is no act of rebellion, no divine protector like Enki, who steps in to save humanity. The message is clear: obey or be destroyed. This is the moment when the shift toward absolute obedience to one God is solidified. It's important to understand the weight of this shift. In the Sumerian world, gods had personalities, flaws, and even conflicting desires. There was room for human agency, for questioning, for rebellion. But as the Israelites moved toward monotheism, that room for agency disappeared. To question God or to challenge the divine will became an act of heresy. In a society ruled by priests and kings who claimed to speak for God, this shift created a system where dissent was not just discouraged, it was punished with divine wrath. This change wasn't just about religious belief, it was about creating a new social order. The transition from polytheism to monotheism marked the beginning of a new way of governing, one that would lay the foundation for the rise of kingdoms, empires, and eventually modern nation-states. The singular, omnipotent God was not just a spiritual figure, he was a political tool, a means of consolidating power in the hands of a few. By claiming that the rulers of the land spoke for this God, the priesthood and kingship were able to control the people through fear, obedience, and religious doctrine. And yet, as much as this system has shaped history, it has also shaped us. The legacy of monotheism, with its emphasis on obedience and submission, continues to influence how we view authority, governance, and our relationship with the divine. Think about how often we are told to obey without question. to trust in authority, and to accept that some things are beyond our understanding. The idea of a singular, unchallengeable God laid the groundwork for a system where the individual is subordinated to the collective, where questioning authority is seen as a threat to societal stability. But let's pause and think, is this truly the way things were meant to be? In the Sumerian myths, we see gods who allow for human autonomy, who encourage growth, exploration, and even rebellion. Enki's gift of knowledge to humanity wasn't seen as a curse, it was a blessing. It was an act of compassion, an act of trust in humanity's ability to rise above its circumstances. This idea that humanity has the right to knowledge, to challenge authority, and to shape its own destiny is a powerful one. It's a message that resonates with us even today, in an age where we have more access to knowledge than ever before. We can learn from these ancient stories. The shift from polytheism to monotheism, while necessary for the consolidation of power in ancient societies, also came at a cost. It came at the cost of human agency, of the ability to think for ourselves, to question, to challenge. It came at the cost of a more dynamic, less controlled relationship with the divine. In today's world, we have the opportunity to reclaim this autonomy, to reconnect with a view of the divine that encourages curiosity, exploration, and independent thought. Just as Enki shared knowledge with humanity, we too can embrace the knowledge and wisdom that comes from questioning the narratives we've been taught. We are not meant to be mere followers, blindly accepting what we are told. The divine is not a force that seeks to control us, but one that encourages us to grow, to question, and to seek the truth for ourselves. In a world where information is more accessible than ever, we have the chance to build a new relationship with the divine, one that values wisdom, autonomy, and the pursuit of truth. We can move beyond the rigid obedience that has defined so much of our history and embrace a more fluid, compassionate view of the divine. Just as the Sumerians once did, we can once again see the gods as our partners, not our overlords. So as we continue to explore the history of monotheism and its impact on society, let's keep this question in mind. What would it look like if we reclaimed the wisdom of the past and allowed ourselves the freedom to question, to seek knowledge, and to define our own path? What if, instead of seeing the divine as a source of control, we saw it as a source of empowerment? The answer to these questions may just be the key to unlocking a new understanding of our place in the world and our relationship to the divine. As we continue to explore the rise of monotheism, there's one fundamental question that remains at the heart of this shift. Why did this change occur? And what consequences did it have on humanity's relationship with the divine? The ancient world, as we've seen, was full of gods with distinct personalities, powers, and roles. But with the emergence of monotheism, the gods were stripped of their individuality, and one single deity emerged, a god of absolute authority, demanding unquestioning obedience and submission. This transformation wasn't just theological, it was political. The consolidation of divine power into a single entity wasn't just about faith, it was about control. In the ancient world, especially in civilizations like Sumer, gods were seen as part of the fabric of life itself. They weren't distant or unreachable beings. They were intimately involved with humanity's growth, survival, and struggles. The Sumerian gods were both protectors and challengers. Enki, the god of wisdom, actively shaped humanity's destiny. He gave knowledge and power, even if it meant defying the other gods. In the Sumerian myth, Enki defied the wrath of Enlil, the storm god, to save humanity from the flood, showing mercy and offering protection when destruction seemed imminent. This was a relationship of mutual respect and cooperation between gods and humans. Enki's rebellion wasn't viewed as a betrayal, but as an act of love. an act that showed humanity deserved wisdom and autonomy. But when the shift towards monotheism began, all of that changed. The focus moved away from gods with individual personalities and desires to a single, supreme God whose will was absolute. There was no longer room for the diversity of the gods or the balance between divine forces. Now, everything, creation, judgment, and salvation, rested with one God. And this God demanded not just worship, but blind obedience. This was a pivotal moment, one that would redefine the relationship between humanity and the divine, establishing a hierarchy where humans were no longer seen as partners with the gods, but as subjects under their rule. This transition didn't just affect religious beliefs, it had profound social and political implications. As kings and priests in the ancient world began to centralize their power, they saw the perfect opportunity to use religion as a tool for control. A singular, omnipotent God aligned perfectly with the political systems they were building. Imagine the power of a single deity whose will could not be questioned, who could dictate the law and establish the rules of society. The shift from polytheism to monotheism created a framework where religious authority was centralized, and leaders could claim that their rule was divinely ordained. The message was clear: obey God, and you obey the rulers who speak on his behalf. To question the authority of the ruler was to question the will of God. This shift is clearly illustrated in the story of Noah's Ark. In the Hebrew Bible, the flood isn't a story of divine debate or rebellion, it's a story of absolute submission. Noah doesn't challenge God's decision to destroy the world, he obeys. The lesson becomes one of compliance. The righteous are those who obey, and the wicked are those who question or rebel. In the Sumerian version of the flood, however, Enki actively rebels against the other gods' decision to wipe out humanity, saving those who were deemed worthy. Enki's decision to defy the other gods challenges the idea that humanity is inherently flawed and deserving of destruction. In the biblical version, that complexity is stripped away. The focus is no longer on human agency or the possibility of redemption, but on obedience to a single, sovereign God. But the shift to monotheism didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual process, and it didn't take place in isolation. It was shaped by political, social, and cultural factors that were changing throughout the ancient world. In Israel, the rise of kingship and the need to unify the people under one banner of divine law set the stage for the creation of a monotheistic system. And this system was reinforced by the growing power of the priesthood. As the priests became the intermediaries between the people and God, they gained unprecedented authority. The power to interpret God's will and dictate religious law gave them control over the lives of the people. And because God's will was seen as absolute and unquestionable, those who held the keys to divine knowledge held power over the masses. The consolidation of power into one God was a way of consolidating power into one ruler. It gave rise to a system of control that we still see today in many forms. Think about the way authority is often justified in modern society. Through divine right, through the idea that rulers are chosen by God and thus cannot be challenged. This idea of divine right is not a new concept. It dates back to the ancient Israelites, who saw their kings as the earthly representatives of God. The God they worshipped was not just the creator of the universe, he was the ultimate authority whose laws could not be contested. And in the hands of the rulers, this concept became a tool for maintaining power. This framework of unquestionable authority laid the foundation for centuries of religious and political systems that demanded compliance. And in these systems, knowledge became something to be controlled. In the polytheistic world, wisdom and knowledge were given freely by the gods, particularly by Enki, who was known for his compassion and desire to help humanity grow. But in the monotheistic system, knowledge was no longer seen as a gift. It became something to be guarded, to be dispensed only to those deemed worthy. This shift fundamentally changed how we view knowledge and power. Knowledge became the domain of the elite, and questioning authority became dangerous. In a world where obedience to God was emphasized, the value of questioning was lost. The relationship between humanity and the divine was no longer one of partnership and mutual respect. It was one of hierarchy and control. To challenge the divine will was to challenge the very fabric of society. But this has had profound consequences on our understanding of ourselves and our place in the world. The message of monotheism, with its emphasis on obedience, has shaped how we think about authority and power, not just in religious terms, but in every aspect of our lives. We have been taught that authority is something to be respected without question, that to question is to rebel, to step out of line. But what if the message of the ancient world, the message of the Sumerian gods, offers a different vision? What if, instead of seeing the divine as an entity that demands obedience, we see it as a force that empowers us? What if, instead of being subjects of divine will, we see ourselves as active participants in our own destiny, as partners with the divine? This was the world the Sumerians knew, a world where gods didn't demand blind obedience but offered wisdom, growth, and autonomy. We have the power to reclaim this vision. We don't have to live in a world where questioning is seen as a threat to authority. The divine does not exist to control us, but to empower us. The story of the gods, especially Enki, teaches us that knowledge, wisdom, and independence are divine gifts, not threats. By rethinking our relationship with the divine, by embracing the lessons of the past, we can create a world where knowledge is free, where authority is questioned, and where we have the courage to seek the truth for ourselves. This isn't just about reclaiming an ancient worldview, it's about reclaiming our own humanity. It's about challenging the systems that have controlled us for centuries and building a new way of understanding ourselves and our relationship to the divine. We don't have to be subjects under divine will. We can be partners in the creation of our own destiny. And that perhaps is the most profound lesson we can learn from the ancient gods. As we delve deeper into the evolution of religion, it's impossible to ignore the staggering parallels between the ancient Sumerian gods and the Christian concept of the Holy Trinity. In the Sumerian pantheon, we see three primary figures: Anu, Enlil, and Enki. While these gods may seem very different from the Christian understanding of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, there are striking similarities that cannot be overlooked. This isn't a simple coincidence. It is an echo from the past, a story rewritten to fit new theological needs. Anu, the highest deity in Sumerian mythology, ruled the heavens. He was the god of the cosmos, the ultimate force behind creation, and the one who held the power to establish order in the universe. Anu was, in many ways, a figure who was removed from the daily affairs of humans. His role was one of cosmic oversight, not active engagement. He was powerful, but distant, a god whose influence was felt everywhere, yet whose presence was seldom directly experienced. In the Christian tradition, this resembles the concept of God the Father, an omnipotent, omniscient figure who creates the world but does not always intervene in the daily lives of his creations. Like Anu, the Father represents the ultimate transcendental power, the source from which all life flows. The connection between Anu and God, the Father, may seem abstract at first, but the patterns are undeniable. Both are seen as the originators of all things, distant and all-powerful, yet present in every facet of creation. Then we come to Enlil, the storm god of Sumer. Enlil was associated with both creation and destruction. He was powerful, commanding, and often vengeful. He was the god of air and wind, bringing life to the land, but also the wrath of nature when angered. Enlil's role in Sumerian mythology wasn't just that of a creator, but also of a disciplinarian, one who controlled the forces of nature and made sure humanity stayed within its bounds. His character was multifaceted, both a creator and a destroyer, a god who would act decisively and without hesitation to maintain order in the world. Enlil's role has a striking parallel to the figure of Jesus Christ in the Christian Trinity. While Jesus is often viewed as the loving Son, his role as both Savior and Judge aligns closely with Enlil's duality. Jesus, like Enlil, plays the role of a divine force who brings life but also judges the wicked. His teachings are often focused on love and salvation, but the threat of judgment looms over those who refuse to follow divine law. Just as Enlil was a force of both creation and destruction, Jesus embodies both mercy and judgment. He is a figure who brings light into the world, but also casts judgment on those who stray from the path of righteousness. This duality is at the core of both figures, showing us that divine love and divine justice often exist in tension. Finally, there is Enki, the god of wisdom, water, and creation in Sumerian mythology. Enki was the rebel god, the one who stood against the other gods when it was necessary to protect humanity. He was compassionate, wise, and often acted as a protector for humans, even when his actions defied the will of the other gods. Enki's most famous act of rebellion was when he saved humanity from the flood, defying the orders of Enlil and other gods who had decided to wipe out humanity. Enki's love for humanity was so great that he chose to intervene, to ensure that life would continue and that humanity would have the chance to grow. This is where we see the most compelling connection to the Christian concept of the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is often seen as the guiding force in the world today, one who brings wisdom, insight, and comfort to those who seek it. Enki, in many ways, mirrors this role. Like the Holy Spirit, Enki is a figure who offers knowledge, who shows humanity the path to wisdom, and who empowers humans to live their lives in accordance with divine will. Enki's role as a protector of humanity aligns with the Holy Spirit's role as a comforter and guide, the one who leads humanity through the darkness and into the light of divine understanding. The parallels between these three Sumerian gods and the Christian Trinity are profound, but they also raise important questions. Why does this connection exist? Why do we see such similar figures across vastly different religious traditions? Could it be that these stories, these gods, were not simply invented by different civilizations to explain the mysteries of the world, but that they were shared and adapted across cultures, reshaped by the needs of those in power? The idea that the concept of the Holy Trinity has roots in the ancient Sumerian gods challenges much of what we have been taught about the origins of Christianity. It suggests that the foundation of Christian theology may not be entirely original, but rather a reworking of older, more complex beliefs. Could the Holy Trinity be a sanitized, more politically palatable version of the Sumerian divine council, reinterpreted for a monotheistic worldview? Could it be that the early church borrowed elements from these ancient myths to craft a narrative that would resonate with both the spiritual and political needs of the time? These questions are not just theoretical, they have real-world implications. The creation of the Christian doctrine of the Trinity helped to establish the absolute power of the church and the state. Just as the Hebrew Bible consolidated religious authority in the hands of a few, the development of Christian theology solidified the church's control over the masses. The concept of one God, manifested in three distinct but unified persons, created a powerful symbol of divine authority that could not be challenged. It reinforced the idea of a hierarchy, where the Pope, priests, and kings became the earthly representatives of divine will. But perhaps there is a deeper lesson in all of this. The Sumerian gods were not just figures of worship. They were reflections of humanity's complex relationship with the divine. They embodied the qualities of mercy, wisdom, creation, and destruction. They showed that divinity is not a singular, unchanging force, but a dynamic, multifaceted presence in the world. The Holy Trinity, while rooted in these ancient myths, has often been used to justify a system of control and obedience. But at its core, the Trinity is a reminder that the divine is not confined to one simple idea. It is vast, encompassing the fullness of creation, love, wisdom, and judgment. Perhaps in our modern world, we can learn from the stories of these ancient gods. We can learn that the divine is not something to be feared or blindly obeyed, but something to be understood, embraced, and experienced. The Sumerian gods, with their complexity and humanity, offer us a model for how we might approach the divine today. Instead of seeing the divine as a distant, authoritarian figure, we can understand it as something that walks alongside us, offering wisdom, compassion, and protection. As we reflect on the connections between the Sumerian gods and the Christian Trinity, we are reminded that the divine is not a static, fixed idea. It is something that evolves with us, something that speaks to our deepest needs and desires. The stories of these gods, whether from Sumer or from the Bible, are reflections of our own journey as human beings. They show us that the divine is both within us and around us, that it empowers us to grow, to learn, and to seek wisdom in all its forms. The question now is, how do we reclaim this ancient wisdom in our modern lives? How do we honor the complexity of the divine while embracing the unity of all things? These ancient stories were not just written to explain the world. They were written to teach us about ourselves, about the power of the divine, and about the ways in which we are all connected. In the end, the stories of the gods, both ancient and modern, remind us that we are not subjects under divine rule, but partners in the ongoing creation of the world. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all. As we come to the end of this journey, it's important to reflect on the deeper truths we've uncovered. The story of the gods, from Sumer to the rise of monotheism, is not just an ancient tale. It is a mirror to our own journey of spiritual discovery. The shift from a world filled with diverse deities, each embodying different aspects of human nature, to a singular, all-powerful God, represents more than a theological transformation. It symbolizes a turning point in how we, as humans, understand our place in the universe and our relationship with the divine. For centuries, we've been taught that the divine is distant, unyielding, and unquestionable. We've been taught that our role is to simply obey and follow, to submit to a higher power without question. But what if this understanding is incomplete? What if, beneath the surface of monotheism, there is a deeper message of partnership, of co-creation with the divine? The Sumerian gods, with all their complexity and humanity, offer us a window into a different kind of relationship with the divine, one where wisdom, mercy, and even rebellion are seen as paths to greater understanding and growth. In our search for truth, it's essential to remember that the divine is not confined to a singular narrative. The stories of Enki, Enlil, and Anu remind us that the divine can be multifaceted, embracing both creation and destruction, love and judgment. It's easy to feel lost in the vastness of the universe, to feel disconnected from something greater than ourselves. But these ancient stories offer a profound truth. The divine is not something that stands apart from us, but something that is intimately connected to our own journey. The gods of Sumer didn't just watch over humanity. They walked with humanity, guiding us, challenging us, and offering us wisdom that could empower us to change the world. As we've explored the parallels between the ancient gods and the Christian Trinity, we see how these narratives have shaped our understanding of God, of authority, and of ourselves. But we must also ask, what happens when we reclaim the complexity of these stories? What happens when we allow ourselves to see the divine not as a force that demands blind obedience, but as a partner that walks beside us, encouraging us to grow, to learn, and to create? This is a question that we must each answer for ourselves. As we continue to explore the stories of the gods, we can begin to reshape our own understanding of the divine. We don't have to see God as a distant, unapproachable figure. We can understand God as the source of wisdom, love, and power that is always present in our lives, offering us guidance and strength when we need it most. It's not about submitting to an unyielding force. It's about finding balance, about embracing the divine spark within us all, and about recognizing that we are not alone in our struggles. If this video has brought value to your soul, if it has helped you find light in the midst of darkness, I invite you to support this channel with your energy. Every little bit of encouragement, whether it's a like, a comment, or a subscription, means the world to me. Your support allows me to continue creating content that shares wisdom, light, and love with others. It fuels my passion to bring more of these transformative stories to life. It's not just about the numbers. It's about creating a community of like-minded souls who seek the truth and yearn for deeper understanding. Every small act of support, no matter how simple, is priceless to me. So, if you've found something here that resonates with your heart, that speaks to the deeper parts of your being, I humbly ask for your support. Your energy, your presence, and your encouragement are what make this journey possible. In a world that often feels divided, let's create something different. Let's build a space where we can question, explore, and grow together, where we can embrace the complexity of our spiritual journeys without fear of judgment or dismissal. The stories of the past, the lessons we can learn from them, are here to remind us that we are not meant to be passive participants in life. We are meant to be active co-creators with the divine. We have the power to shape our own destiny, to break free from the chains of obedience, and to walk in partnership with the divine wisdom that has always been available to us. So, as you reflect on the ideas we've shared in this video, I encourage you to take a moment to think about your own journey. How can you reclaim your divine power? How can you embrace the complexity of the divine and the wisdom that it offers? The journey is yours to take, and I'm honored to walk beside you as we uncover the truths that have been hidden for so long. Together, let's continue to seek, to question, and to grow. The divine has always been with us, guiding, loving, and empowering us. All we need to do is remember. Thank you, from the bottom of my heart, for being here, for being part of this community. Your presence, your support, and your energy are invaluable. I am truly grateful. And remember, the journey has only just begun. Keep questioning, keep seeking, and keep growing. We are all part of something greater than ourselves, and together we can create a brighter, more compassionate world. If you found value in this video, please show your support with a like, a comment, or a subscription. Your energy is the fuel that keeps this channel alive and thriving. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to continuing this journey with you.